This is the process shot. I'm Michael. I'm stuck in a haunted movie theater, and I've seen they, them. Or is it they slash them? Either way, it's a new horror film from director John Logan that follows a week-long session at an LGBTQ conversion therapy camp and several of its teenage campers, some attending out of their own choice, and others to cut a deal with their parents. Regardless, they are all subjected to the same treatment, being pushed to the brink by the camp counselors and their increasingly dubious and eventually illegal methods. In spite of the psychological and physical torture going on, the campers do manage to find solace and support within each other, and eventually come to accept the person that they are. Also, there's a masked killer stalking the campgrounds. Yeah. The fact that I'm bringing up that part of the story at the end of the synopsis shows just how haphazardly it was put into the movie, and it definitely shows over time. There's a cold opener with one kill, then literally 2 explicit scenes with the killer over the next hour or so, before shoving pretty much all of the slasher horror story into the third act. This isn't even a case of a genre bait-and-switch, since the rest of the film is actually a somewhat grounded psychological horror film. I mean, it's hardly realistic, but it's certainly more interesting than you might expect, and definitely more so than the slasher story. It shows a clear power play between the campers and the counselors, the latter of whom go to great lengths to try to get the upper hand over the more resilient campers, as well as exploit them for their own gratification. There are some interesting ideas going on, most of all the counselors resorting to more and more extreme methods over time, and how the campers fight against it in their own ways. But I think the problem is that while the filmmakers might have wanted the movie to be more along these lines from the start, they couldn't actually figure out how to end it within the same lines, as if they had writer's block and just decided to take it in a more sensational direction that looked good in marketing. They do at least tie the slasher elements into the established story and setting, but it still makes me wonder if they couldn't have found a way to tie these events together through a more grounded means, or if they just couldn't take the time to figure out how to end the story. Anyways, on a technical level, the movie has a pretty clear lack of a budget, though this is pretty obvious when you see Blumhouse produce this movie. It's pretty obvious that they rented out a campground or something for a week or two, and odds are that most of the locations are just shot around stuff that had already been on site. Thankfully, they don't try to pretend that there's more to the setting than they've actually been given. Some of the film's cinematography is able to showcase some of the natural beauty of the area through wide shots, though for the most part the film is kept looking pretty unstylized. There's even less style in editing, which is either put to practical use or made to hide the lack of a special effects budget, cutting away from slasher scenes from anything that would require more than fake blood or digital splatter. Really, the movie is pretty unremarkable in every other aspect, save maybe for the part where they have a literal song and dance break. And it's again mostly to do with the low-budget by-design nature of the production. The way that the story is treated doesn't help much either, and really that's enough in itself to bring down the whole experience overall, leading you to expect a slow trickle of slasher horror throughout the story when there's almost none of that at all. It ultimately feels like they wanted a story with deeper themes or concepts, but just gave up after getting stuck and decided to fall back on something familiar instead. They, them. They slashed them. I still don't know how it's supposed to be said. John Logan, 2022. 2 stars. I wouldn't really recommend it, at least not unless you'd like to see the psychological horror parts. That's it for me. If you like this review, leave a like. If you have something to add, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. I think I might have actually said everything I wanted to say here. Now I don't have anything for an outro.